Hey everyone, welcome back to the Level Up podcast where we talk with folks that are gone from agent to entrepreneur. And today we've got a great one who's going to get some really good information to us. Got Mr. Aaron Fox out of Century 21 Looking Glass, which comes to us from Lansing, Michigan. And so Aaron's going to bring us up to speed on exactly what he's been doing over the last 16 years in business. Aaron, welcome to the Level Up podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So for those of the audience that may not know who you are, kind of what your background is, can you kind of set the stage for us in terms of, where you started, how you got into the business, and bring us up to present day on what you're doing?
Yeah. So, fresh out of college, I started actually with the state of Michigan, working for the Department of Corrections, union job. Really quick, I realized that wasn't for me. Not only is it a super negative environment, but the pay is, it's a union job, so everyone gets paid the same. And so I started getting antsy, and I started looking at other things to do, where the entrepreneurial mindset, could not only make me more money, but also, enjoy going to work.
Right.
Because that was one of the big things is I love to go to work every day. Now, back then I didn't. I hated it. And so came across real estate as a potential career, did some research, got my license, did both for a couple years with a different brokerage, and then made the switch in 2007 to real estate full-time. Worst time in history to make that switch, but going from a steady every 2 weeks paid paycheck, but haven't looked back. And it's been every year my volume was going up in production, and then got into management of with the Century 21 brand back in 2009, middle of 2009. Enjoyed that, still in the downturn, but things were going well for my personal business in the office. Then got into ownership, roughly almost 7 years ago, 6+ years ago. From that point, we've, grown exponentially. And so we've now got 4 locations, 60+ agents, and, we're just trucking forward into 2020.
Awesome. So one of the things that I noticed was interesting is you mentioned the environment that you left. And I can imagine that is in the corrections department. I can imagine that is every single day. Like there's probably not a lot of positive stuff. And, it's always just that environment's a tough one. And you're working next to people where you're always compensated the same no matter what the other person is doing. So when you decided to make that jump, what was the biggest driving factor in saying, okay, enough's enough. I've got to actually take control of what I'm going to do going forward.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple. The flexibility of schedule was one. Compensation was a pretty big one. But the biggest for me at that point was, and you can't put a monetary value on it, happiness in going to work, and how that affects your home life, personal life. In real estate, you can have a great day, you go home, you have a great night. Or if you have a great night, you can go home and have an early morning. It depends on, what schedule you're working, and how busy your clients are keeping you. In that environment, it was always negative. And then that carries over into the personal life, and there is no value to put on that. It's exponential.
Yeah. So you got started part-time, and then at what point did you know that, okay, now I've got, because I would say that everybody knows the turnover rate for people to get a license and get into business. It's probably less than 50% are in business a year later. And a lot of those have tried it full time. So you started at part-time. The odds are even stacked even higher against you for being successful. At what point did you know, or what did you need to know that you could say, okay, now I can make the jump? Did you get a pipeline built up, or did you have some habits that you developed and said, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, or where did you make that transition to full time?
So from day one, I had a rough exit strategy for my state job, but it wasn't until probably the second or third deal that at that point I knew that I could be successful in this. And that's when I really buckled down, and I set, here's my pipeline, here's my long-term goals, my 1-year goal, 3-year, 5-year, and stuck to it. And holding myself accountable to that timeline and to those goals was the key.
Okay.
And making sure, recognizing the pipeline. I wasn't going to hit that goal if I wasn't working, those long days, both jobs, to hit that goal at that point, which was, roughly 2.5 years out at that point.
Yeah. So you had a couple of deals, so you could see, okay, I can work through a transaction, I can find a buyer, find a seller, get a deal closed, get a check. But it doesn't sound like you had done, you spent 2 or 3 years part-time until you saved every check and then could go, like you still were taking a leap of faith at some point when you made that.
Yeah, absolutely. At that point in my life, most of my commission was thinking longer term, and so I was using that to build my pipeline.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't save it all, but I had the pipeline where just about exactly where I had hoped and planned on it being. Again, we all saw a downturn coming in 2007. We didn't expect it to go where it did. Yeah. And so we were thinking correction at the time, not a crash. Yeah. And so that you can't necessarily plan for that big of a change, but a lot of it came down to personally budgeting along with setting up my business plan. Because if you don't do both at the same time, you're not going to be successful, even if you're not making that transition.
Yeah, for sure. Because the one thing we know is the market's always going to change. And like you, I got in about the same time, 2006, and it was a little weird. Like 2007 was a little bit, something's not right here, but we had no clue that 2008 through 2013 was coming up ahead of us. And, now looking in hindsight, and I'd be interested to see kind of your take on this, but I look back on it, I couldn't have chosen a better time to get into the business. And is that, tell me your thought on that.
Well, no, I completely agree. It forces you, or forced the agents that were at that point in their career during that time frame to, in my opinion, do the job right, do the job well, and go the extra mile to retain those clients, to get those referrals, to be successful. So many agents and a lot of people like to join the market in this type of economy. Yeah. Long term, if they're not doing their due diligence to always be better and think of what it's going to be like in a downturn, they're not doing themselves any benefit. But yeah, I think it was actually a blessing for me personally to come into the market at that point.
Yeah. I think a couple of things, as I look back on a couple of things that I know were just so important that I was forced to learn was you had to learn skills at that period of time, because the consumers, their level of doubt that they had, not only in what was going to happen in the market, but what was happening with agents, mortgage brokers, all the stuff that had caused the crash. You had to be skilled at the conversations you're having, and you had to offer solutions and have a lot of tough messages. So you were forced into that. And I think those that started at that time and made it through probably came out the other end a little bit more polished and having a little bit better opportunity to serve the client at a high level. The other thing I want to point out is the fact that you didn't just save everything and then go, okay, now I've replaced a year's worth of income. You still at some point had to make a jump and a leap of faith. And I think it's important that people understand, no matter what you're doing, where you're at in your career, if you're listening to this, just getting in business, haven't done a deal, don't even know where you're going to, land at in terms of a company, then you're going to make a leap of faith. If you are already doing X amount of deals and you're saying, you know what, I want to maybe go on my own. I want to open up a brokerage. I want to change what I'm doing. There's always a leap of faith involved in anything that's worth doing. There's typically some risk, but you mitigated the risk by understanding, all right, I got some systems in place and I can be successful at this.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Anything in life has a risk to it that's worth it. And I always caution, whether it's business or personal, you've got to weigh those risk rewards and you've got to think it through. You can't go roughshot and decide, I had closed 3 deals, I'm going to quit my job. What do you have in your pipeline for the next month? That's always the biggest risk. If you spend the time, set the plan, and make the decision beforehand, thinking out, whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months, 2 years, that's going to help determine your success.
Yeah.
Because, we see it all over the agents that, it's easy, but then if the well dries up for those easy ones, they don't know what to do to get the next one, the hard ones.
Yeah, for sure. And we're in it. We've been in that market for the last 5 or 6 years of people coming out of, doing anything, and they roll in, and you've got your centers of influence. And even if you don't do that, you've got so many transactions going around that they're just jumping in the middle of stuff and bypassing the skills. And that's what happens usually every cycle is we'll call off 30-40% of the agents in any given market because it is still a skill-based business. So
yeah, absolutely.
So you had some level of success. At what point did you start looking and saying maybe continuing to just focus on production isn't the route that I want to go? Maybe I'm looking at something more, because you mentioned that you took a management role and that evolved into ownership. What was the shift that took place from producer to now getting into a different role for yourself?
So I had always tried to stay on the curve or ahead of the curve, especially technology-wise. What's the next big thing? How could it make my job easier, work less, make more? And when I first realized it, the broker at the time had asked if I would teach a class on a subject, and got in the class and loved it. And that there was an immense pleasure just to run the class, see how the agents interacted and the benefit they got from it. And so then I volunteered to do more, and then became a focal point for agent questions. And it may not be on the classes that I was teaching at the time, and found out I enjoyed that, even if they weren't easy conversations to be having or tough situations for the other agents and a deal they had going. And then it just kept evolving. And then I got to the opportunity to have the ownership, and that's the ultimate in it. You're the end all be all. My partner and I are with those tough conversations, but also that training and the good stuff too. Those great smooth deals that the agents took advantage of the training that we offer to help close that deal.
Yeah, for sure. So did you guys, when you're at, when we talked before we started recording, you've got about 60, 65 agents now?
Yep.
Okay. And what kind of growth has that looked like? Where did you start with when you got involved in terms of the ownership?
So we were in the high 30s at that point.
Okay. So doubled in size.
Yep. One office. When I got into ownership, we sat down doing our business planning, and we set our pillars. What were we going to be known for? What was our value package going to be to our agents? And we knew it was going to be a longer term process. Offering environment, offering services to go along with compensation. That's harder to recruit too. Yeah. And being selective on what agents we bring on board, not just hiring everybody that comes in the door. All of those, we recognized when we were making our business plan that was going to be a longer term success. So fast forward several years, we're seeing that. We were more selective on new agents we brought on. They're having those successes year 2, 3, 4, and 5 now. And the market's recognized. So that makes recruiting existing agents, established agents, much easier. And so that's why across the board, this year I think we've added 15 alone between experienced and brand new agents. And for our marketplace, that's a really good number. Yeah. So you guys, when you sat down and put the business plan together, of course, you've got to figure out, all right, if we're going to be in office, then what is our value? Because this is probably a good conversation for people to listen to, even as agents, that Absolutely. If you don't have your value packaged together and you don't know what you bring to the consumer, then you only have one value and you only have one thing to sell, and that's your price. And that's why agents continue to get pushed down in commissions and in everything else, because if they're not clear on what their value is, then you're selling based on price. And as an owner, then you probably recognize that. So what did you guys determine was going to be, what is the value package today that an agent needs
when they're deciding who to come work for?
Mhm. So for us, our first pillar was environment. And I will not ever work in a negative environment again, and I won't let my offices be that way. And so any agent, whether it's new or existing, has to fit in with our dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
When our offices get together, it's always an amazing time. And some of the agents don't see each other for, the year, or they only see each other at the barbecue in the summer or the Christmas party. But regardless of their backgrounds or their histories, they all get along well, and they all help each other out, which, that makes my heart full just to see that, because that was first and foremost what we had looked at. The second was services. Whether it's a degreed marketing director who's handling social media, or admin staff to handle a lot of the paperwork, our transaction management systems, taking all that work that keeps the agents in the office versus out in the street selling homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we come up with a lot of great ideas. And in our minds, there's a base for them because both my partner and I have experience selling.
Mm-hmm.
But then we take it to our agents and say, this is what we're thinking. Do you see a benefit in it? And they're the ones that make the final decision.
Right.
And so that would be number two. And then number three is compensation. In our marketplace, in my opinion, we offer the most services, the best environment. And this year we rolled out a cap structure, which, there's always differing opinions of that. But in our marketplace, we're the only traditional franchise that offers that. And so it's really tough to beat our full value package.
Yeah. So the two things, that those first two that you hit on, I think are so important with the environment, because there's a trade-off, and we see this all the time in agents that are doing, they're fairly successful, but then you hear them talk about, like, I'm doing all this on my own. I'm figuring all this stuff out. And I go into an environment where people are like, I'm the black sheep of it. So I think the environment, not only does it make it better, just life for the agents, but it shows that you guys have got a place where somebody can go and find their role, find their niche. And I think that for most agents, that is still important. It's not just about what, my top line split is. It's about, am I part of something that is, has got a little bit bigger mission, and that I want to go in and be a part of every day.
Oh, absolutely. And within that environment, we lumped in, broker availability, which we track every month, and we post it out there to our agents. This is how many hours we were available for questions with our management team. Our agents know not to hesitate to reach out to us if they have questions. It doesn't matter, how complex the questions are. The old adage, there is no stupid question. We believe in that wholeheartedly. And with our new agents, coming off the street, having that environment fosters their success too, because they're not afraid to ask an experienced agent, and that experienced agent is not afraid to help. And in a lot of environments, you don't get that in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys, you make the agents aware that you're available. And I know, there's a direct correlation between how quickly a new licensee, or even somebody coming over that maybe is experienced but isn't experiencing the type of production that they want. There is a direct correlation between how much that person's involved in and engaged with whoever's coaching them or training them, and how quickly they get started. Like, it is you've got to have a challenge, ask for help, and then act on what they tell you to do. Otherwise, you're just gonna spin your wheels, typically trying to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And we track just about everything. And when we revamped our process back, 5-6 years ago, one of the things that we were failing at was training agents, new agents, existing agents. And so we've revamped our whole training program. We modularized it and reinforced that broker availability. And so industry average, less than 15% of agents are going to be in the business in 5 years. Well, we're over 65%. And we have the data to back that up. And that, in my opinion, again, ties into the environment aspect, but it's our environment and training program to help lead to that success.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about something I think is important for people to understand if they're listening to this and kind of wondering, from different points of view, what's my value package to my agents, or what do I need to be looking for if I am an agent? You and your partner were both producers and
Yes.
then transitioned to management and then ownership, and now you're leading the pack going forward. Why is that, in your mind, why is that important?
Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons. One is the functionality of the process. Whether it's why there was photo syndication issues. We've dealt with them.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to fix them. Two, it's how to deal with the different clients. And just like dealing with agents, there are so many different personalities. You've got to be able to adapt to those. But odds are we've seen just about every type of client out there between my partner and I.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's an angry seller, angry buyer, a disenfranchised client, we've seen it, we've dealt with it, and so that helps us relate to the situation versus the cookie cutter answer of, this is what it should be, or this is
customer's always right, or
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then being able to handle those deals. I mean, we're never going to know everything in this business. Anyone that claims to know it all, honestly, they're messing with you.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen a lot of it. And so this is the thinking 3, 4, 5 steps down the road. Yes, this is a possible solution, but here's your best long-term solution. Whether it's prospecting or business planning or just dealing with an angry client.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, along with the being able to relate to the tools and the negatives aspects of our business, the scheduling or time blocking, availability to clients, I think it puts more credence into what we say.
Yeah, for sure. And I just had a conversation yesterday so Greg and I opened a real estate school in our Charleston market, first quarter of 2019. And so we've been kind of slowly building those classes up. And I usually will come in and just have a 30-minute conversation in there last week, just answering questions and stuff. And one of them asked a really good question yesterday, which was, in your experience, why do people kind of wash out of the business? They know what the statistics are. 50% of the people that get a license aren't in the business doing real estate in 12 months. And so they asked, why does that happen? And the answer was, because of course we've thought about this a lot, the answer usually is because most of the people that get into business don't come from a direct sales background. So they're coming in from somewhere else. I didn't, you didn't. They're being coached and trained or managed by people who typically didn't sell at a high level or at the level that the new person wants to achieve. So now you've got somebody coming in without experience. You've got somebody coaching them that didn't really have experience. And then we throw in their independent contractors. And then there's this weird, well, they can't tell me what to do. And then the broker owner managers go, well, I can't really tell them what to do. So go figure, 50% of the people wash out of business. And I think with where you guys are coming from, having that experience and that perspective gives you a unique advantage for being able to have some credibility with those people and get them to buy into what you're doing, because you're not coaching and training from a philosophy or from a textbook. It's from experience. Is that fair to say that's kind of what you guys are doing?
Oh, absolutely. And that kind of ties in with our services, because yes, I can absolutely help business plan and help develop the tech side of somebody's business plan. But we also have our director of development is a professor at a local university who is a marketing professor. And so his strength is more, neighborhood mailers and how to choose what the best neighborhood to go to try to capture all that business is, and being able to all work together helps all that. And also see the downfalls of, sitting back to wait for the phone to ring, or just pigeonholing yourself into one referral source or one marketing plan or one style of marketing within a marketing plan.
Yeah, makes sense. So what's on your 3 to 5 year plan right now? We're at the tail end of the fourth quarter of a decade. And, got in at a very crazy time, and we might have a very crazy time in the next 10 years. So what do you have on the agenda for the next 3 to 5 years with your business?
Yep. So we're going to continue to recruit. We're going to continue to foster the great environment and build our agents' business first and foremost. With that, their success will lead to the company's success, and that makes all the other aspects easier. Do I see us having a couple more locations in the next couple of years? Definitely, potentially. We expect to see our agent base grow. Total volume, we expect to continue to grow. This year, we're up 53% in transaction count, wow. 50% in volume year over year. So we don't expect those numbers for the next decade. But if we keep on the management owner side, keep doing our job, those goals become much more attainable. Mm-hmm. Do I ever see us having 500 agents and 20 offices? No. I think that would take away from our environment a little bit. Mm-hmm. But maybe if we have the right partners in those locations, that might change too.
Yeah, sure. So how do you guys, how do you answer this question? Because I get this a lot now, and a lot of it I think is because we're kind of in that environment with a lot of new people that we're being exposed to with the school and stuff. But how would you answer the question that somebody asked now of, seems a little like maybe we're at the end of a cycle in the real estate world, or there's so many people in. How do you answer the question is it a good time for me to get in the business if it's that person that's out there, or maybe the person that's wondering, what do I need to do? Because I'm in it, but I'm just like, what's missing that I need to do to find the success I'm looking for? How would you answer that?
Yeah, well, the first would be, do you have the right environment? Whether it's to learn or to push you for success, to help drive you. Anyone can provide all the tools to be successful, but if the agent themselves don't have the drive to make those phone calls, do those follow-ups, show those houses, do that prospecting, that's going to limit their success. But having the right environment and the right tools offered can make that a lot less work, much more easier. And yes, do I expect our market to slow down a little bit, in the next 6 to 12 months? Absolutely. Now is a great time because you can see the easy part of it, and build your base so that when the market does change, you can full steam ahead through it and have the base to be successful long term.
Yeah, I like that, and that's a fact. Is you grow market share in a down market. There's just not about it. And
yep, absolutely.
You've got to do more to get the same in a market like we've been in for the last, depending on where you're at, last 5, 6, 7 years. And then if you build those skills and those habits, and to your point, you've got a great environment around you and you're listening to the right people, then when there is a shift and you got a little less competition because the lazy people get out of the business, then boy, that's really when you see where people can explode in terms of their production. So
yep, absolutely.
That's a great point. So we're just about ready to wrap it up here. So I appreciate you getting on. It's a lot of really good information that I know people are going to take advantage of. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, they're in the Lansing area and they're thinking about, maybe getting into the business or trying to make a change, how do they get a hold of you?
The best way, same as I tell all my agents, call me or text me, 517-404-0050. Much like every agent out there, my phone's always on my hip or in my hand. And unless I'm with a client or one of my family nights, I respond right away.
Great. And if you are in a different part of the country and you've got folks that are either coming to the great state of Michigan or they're moving on, and you can send some referrals over to Aaron. I'm sure he'd be appreciative of that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. And so as always, you can reach me best way is through Facebook Messenger. And please do us a favor, go ahead and hit subscribe on the podcast and give us your feedback. If there's things that other topics, other guests that you think would be good for this audience, it's from agent to entrepreneur, and we want to have all within that realm. We love getting feedback on what you want to hear, and good or bad, we're okay with it. And that helps us continue to get more guests and great contributors like Aaron. So I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to catch up at a C21 event here soon.
That sounds great. I look forward to that.
Sounds great. All right. Thanks so much. And until the next time, we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.